Hello, 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 and welcome back. It's day 3 of the CogX Festival. It's 6th edition. If you've been here for all 6 years of CogX, put your hand up. Yay! It's so nice to see you again. If you've been here for 5 years of CogX, put your hand up. That's me. Yeah, that was Tobacco Doc, year 2. If you were here for the 4th year, which was the year it rained here, it rained in June, believe it or not, and we had a canal stage set up that was moved to the beautiful rainbow tunnel between King's Cross and here. I won't go on with the rest of the years, but just welcome to the Stage Festival too. If you are sitting next to someone and there's a space or a seat behind next to you that's spare, would you please mind shuffling up into the middle so that we can keep the aisle seats free, because there's people that would love to get into the room and we want to get them a lovely seat. Thank you so much. Beautifully done. I joked yesterday that by the end of today, we're going to get a Mexican wave, and I know it's going to happen. So maybe not this session, but I've warned you. I'm really excited to announce the next session. It's been brought to life by PwC, BT, Tech Nation, and Digital Catapult. And I'd love you to give a massive round of applause to the panel who are going to come onto stage now. So this session is called Bridging the Digital Skills Gap, and I'm going to introduce Hephzi Pemberton, who is the CEO of the Equality Group, and over to Hephzi. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Great to be with you here today, looking at this extremely important subject, one of the foremost business challenges in the UK, and I have a fantastic panel here to tackle this topic and look at some of the solutions, really practical solutions around this. So I will introduce the panel. We have Gerard Grech here, founding CEO of Tech Nation, Ben Higgin, who executive board member and partner at PwC, Jules Sivajoti, who's HR director at Digital at BT.
There's an overflow area here if you want to catch the beginning.
Tom Chambers from Robert Walters, director at Robert Walters, head of the technology team there. So I'm going to ask Ben if you could give us a little bit of an overview of the digital skills gap. What does it look like? What are some of the problems? What are some of the solutions from the PwC perspective, which is both a large organisation but also working with many other organisations on this?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just set the scene a little bit about what we've been doing. We've got about 4,000 technologists in our organisation at the moment, but as we launched our new strategy, the new equation, which is all about being human-led and tech-powered, we realised we needed to do more from a technology perspective. So we looked around the country and decided actually we wanted to create a tech centre in Manchester, and we were going to hire up to 1,000 people. Now, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because there aren't 1,000 people sat around in Manchester who are technologists just waiting for us to pick up the phone. And so as we did part of that, we were trying to work out how do we look at some of the challenges in terms of digital and technology talent in the marketplace and actually try to be part of the solution. As an organisation, we've got technologists, we've also got a lot of accountants. That may not surprise people in the audience. And actually, we're pretty good at putting accountants into the system. Lots of people, if you go and speak to your finance function and ask where they were trained in organisations like ours. And so we wanted to think about how do we look at digital skills and technology talent in that vein, and also in the context of a changing workforce, right? So we do a hopes and fears survey every year. It's about 52,000 people, 44 different countries. And one of the slants that we look at is technologists and people who work in technology. Some really interesting things. So some good news for everybody. Technologists are happier at work. Amazing. They're also more empowered. They feel more fulfilled in their jobs. They think their employers are more trustworthy. They think they are fairer. They think they're investing in things that matter to them, so things like ESG. All really great. They're also much more likely to leave, and they're going to ask for a pay rise. Right? So there are some real challenges in the dynamic of the workforce at the moment, which again we were trying to think about. So when we went to Manchester and said, right, how are we going to get these 1,000 people? We said we can't do this on our own. We have a communities of solvers approach at PwC, bring people together to solve client problems, and we need to do the same, I think, with the societal problem. So we work with a number of companies, charities, so TechSheCan. I'm going to big up TechSheCan. I'm a trustee of TechSheCan. It's an awesome organisation trying to get a more diverse workforce, more diverse talent base, so that we can actually bridge, if you like, the skills gap that exists, because it is huge. We work with the University of Salford. There's a structural imbalance, if you like, between demand and supply in that tech talent.
Yeah,
space.
and can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what is the scarcity?
Yeah, well, so we looked at, it was fascinating actually. So the jobs, technology jobs in Manchester alone, right? And we did it in Manchester because we're doing it in Manchester. The same is true everywhere. Jobs went up 164% in just Manchester alone in 1 year. And I can tell you, universities, I mean, on a good day, they'll churn out 5% more a year of technologists. So there's just a fundamental imbalance in terms of that. The talent isn't diverse.
Yeah.
So in particular, there aren't enough women in technology, there aren't enough black people in technology. We believe neurodiverse people are poorly served in technology. So there's a whole load of stats. You can read the report, it's all online, which actually just try and draw out some of those issues for us to debate. And I know you've done something similar.
Yes, in fact, I was to come, Gerard, you've released a report today from Tech Nation looking also on this topic around digital skills and what the state of the nation is for that. Can you share some of the findings from it?
Sure. So we launched today, Tech Nation. It's called People and Skills. We publish it every year, but we've been calling it Jobs and Skills in the past, and now we're talking more about people and skills and the orientation of how things are changing. Skills, obviously, you need, but also the mindset. So the report talks about the number of vacancies, especially in Manchester and other places around the UK. These are advertised agencies, so what we did is actually scrape the insights team, who are brilliant at Tech Nation. They actually scraped a lot of data with the companies to consent, so everyone's aware. And so Adzuna, which is a sort of a job advertising company and a platform, scraping that data. And we looked at the fact that there are many more vacancies than ever before in tech. It should be no surprise, but especially after the pandemic, where the pandemic obviously forced all of us to adopt digital services in every way, right? If I give you an example, at the beginning of the pandemic, 6 million people had downloaded their first app for their bank for the first time. Like that, I mean, we may all be in this room who are very familiar with our phones and our laptops and everything else, but actually there are so many people who are kind of coming to this for the first time.
Yeah.
And so we cannot take that for granted in any way. So the report actually takes a very contextual view. It's really a good read. I mean, I really recommend it before you go to bed tonight. But there are now almost 5 million people working in technology in the UK. Just to give you some context, there's only 31 million people working in the UK as a whole. So that's coming up to close to 16%. Now, 10 years ago, that was 2 million people. So that's just not, by the way, digital tech people. Like, we always think of tech, computer scientists. We all know that it's so much more than that. I mean, I started my career in the music business. Nothing to do with technology. And so it just goes to show how we need to take a very inclusive but also broad view of the fact that technology doesn't just mean technology. Obviously, technology is now having a pervasive impact on our social behavior. And so you need psychologists, you need designers, but also you need IT specialists as well, like algorithm engineers, business analysts. And the report also looks at where have these people come from that are in these roles. So colleges of further education are great places to find apprentices and internships. We're just taking on interns at Tech Nation from a very different type of school. So it's how we're trying to encourage employers as much as possible to think about the fact that it's not about tech, it's about diversity and inclusion. So we've actually also published a pledge and a toolkit to help founders at the very early stage to be thinking about how to make sure that their workforce is diverse, which would mean that you're more innovative. May not necessarily go faster, because there is research to show that. But you will be more innovative in the long run. So yes, we launched today, and it's a great read. as I said, but I'm happy to talk more about it.
Definitely, and it's easier to do if you actually build that into your DNA up front
Yes.
as a founder, and that just
It
spirals
pays
then.
dividend later on, compound interest.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works. Maybe we can come to that employment perspective, Jules, because you're probably facing this day to day as well, building out digital at BT. What are you seeing around actually how you're solving for that gap? And you could maybe talk to us also about reskilling and upskilling of the workforce as well.
Yeah, so it's hard. It's really, really hard. We're facing the challenges every day, both in the UK and, we've got presence in India, and it's super challenging. And we're thinking through what are the different things that we can do, and there are so many. There is, there's the apprenticeship option, and actually at BT we have 15,000 apprentices in BT across the whole organisation. It's just less than 20% of our whole UK organisation, and they don't leave as quickly as other people leave. So there's a real opportunity there. And in digital, we're thinking through, what is that opportunity and how do we grow? I think last year we were committing to 400. How do we grow that? How do we extend that and do more? Reskilling as well. Reskilling is massive. It's not going to solve the problem completely because you need people who want to reskill, and that's a real challenge. But where we've got that drive, that desire, we are really pushing for reskilling programs, opportunities into digital roles. We've had some good success with Scrum Masters, data and AI roles, taking people from shop floors that, in the future we're not going to need as many of, and reskilling them into these roles. And that's showing some really great success. We've also just launched our digital campus. It's an MVP, so it's not perfect yet, but our digital campus is our one-stop shop to give people in BT the access to learning, to, the visibility of the career paths and the progression that they can have through moving into a digital role, an organisation, and that hasn't been there before. And that's really, that only launched 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've already had over 500 hours of learning in that 3 weeks, which is, that's a significant amount of learning, and that's just in the digital part of the organisation. We want to extend that to the whole of BT, and then look at how do we take that and use it for, how we give people access outside of the organisation. And I think the other piece is our responsibility to help people who, not just our employees and not just future talents, but also those small organisations, those startups, those SMEs. How do we give them access, one, to the technology, which as BT we can do, but also to the digital skills that will help make them more effective. And we've got Digital Marketing Hub, which is something where it's packaging up all the things that you need to get yourself started, but then giving them the education as well, so that they can be independent. They can, they're empowered to run that business in an effective, digital savvy way.
And do you partner with education institutions as well in terms of building that pipeline?
Yeah, so we have some partnerships with universities. We're also doing quite a few things with the likes of Code First Girls, Avado for Fast Futures, giving access to people from underrepresented groups, the digital learning and development, and with that then bringing them, often into roles in our organisation, entry-level roles, and we're seeing great success with that. We're looking at how we do some stuff with India colleagues as well, and India universities, because we haven't got as much presence there, but we've got a huge growth agenda there. And so we need to look at how we better that presence and that partnership. But I think that's what it is, it's partnership. And, Code First Girls have been doing amazing things for a while now, and we're taking the opportunity to sort of get on their backs and use them to help us as much as helping them. And it's it's really positive.
Well, it sounds like also you should work with Text You Can.
Yes, absolutely.
Tom, would you tell us a bit more about the broader talent market, what you're seeing in terms of the skills that are most in demand, or also where there's real supply constraints? And obviously the talent market is changing a lot at the moment.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear everyone's perspectives here as well. I'm lucky enough from a recruitment perspective to have a really holistic view around what is the wider market looking like, and senior to entry level up to senior hires. If I look at the wider market, I do think it's shifting a lot. I think if I look at from late 2020 to earlier this year, I think it was very tough for enterprises to hire talent in general, and that was from 2 years upwards, really. And the reason behind that really was there was a lot of scaling businesses with a lot of funding, and they effectively have overhired. You're now seeing from Series B up to kind of big tech level now, there's a lot of redundancies happening, and it's evening out the market. So if I look at the next 12 to 18 months, I do think it will even out for enterprises as well, and it will make it more straightforward for enterprises in the FTSE 100, 250 to be able to have a more strategic view on how they hire, because it just became a uncontrollable talent war, and strategies to be able to include entry level, bring interns through, make sure we're very strong on the diversity side was very tough, because business owners, whether it be from a startup perspective or it be for larger enterprises, they're also trying to hit their goals, retain their staff and so on. If I look at retention as well, I think a lot of the time, business owners or founders or business heads within enterprises will automatically assume that it's all about pay. But I would say a lot of the time it's about EVP. It's about the L&D control as well. And if we talk about upskilling, I think there's some really, really good accelerators out there. The 3-month boot camps are probably really as successful as I've seen, especially with areas like front-end development, UX as well, because I think it's a maybe straightforward, a bit more of a straightforward transition, data in particular as well. But for that, you need L&D to have enough budget and strategic advice in order to implement that properly. So I think, my advice really would be for larger enterprises in particular to have a good L&D budget with a really strategic angle in terms of how you can transition people from marketing into a data role where they know the domain, and then they can effectively bridge that gap because they know the gaps they're trying to solve. It could be people who are really interested to get into information security that might work in risk at the moment, or they may just be gamers and hack games in their spare time, but they want to make that shift. And I think it's about setting up a structure from the top down in terms of how we can actually transition people there, recognize the opportunities. If I look at, taking an analogy, if I look at why Australia was so successful in their own Games 2000, they went all the way to the schooling system, and they were able to look at what people will be good at based on competencies. So they would be like, you will be good at rowing based on X, Y, Z. You could be really good at team sports because of these angles. That's kind of what we need to be doing from school level. We need really good role models who are really effective in their field. Don't think it matters on seniority. It would be great if you have leaders, but I think if you have great female leaders or great female data scientists actually going into schools as well, and really, from 10 years old onwards, really trying to look long term. And I think that's where, going back to your original question, I think this evening out in the market where scaling businesses with far too much funding to know what to do with, now that's going to level out. You're going to have a situation where there will be more room for enterprises to be able to implement this. So
you've got to get to a point where, so one of the big problems for enterprises, and I think for everybody, is choice. There is so much choice in the market in terms of what is a good bootcamp. And I think bootcamps are brilliant. They've got a role to play in the whole sector. Actually, one of the things we're looking at doing is how do you talent scout a bootcamp rather than looking at people's qualifications, right? Because actually, a lot of what you do with apprenticeships, it tends to give, honestly, the same kids more options.
Yes.
Right? Do you want to go to university? No. Well, you have a choice. It's like, well, actually, I want to expand the circle so that there's just more people have options. And so, but as part of that, I do think you have to help people navigate that system. We looked at bootcamp providers. There are 26 bootcamp providers registered in Manchester alone, not including the national ones. So you can multiply that up. And of course, if you're sat there as a school leaver or somebody actually who has been out of the workforce and wants to retrain for whatever reason, it's really confusing. And you don't know what the good ones are. You don't know what the right topics are. Some of them aren't brilliant at getting people into jobs afterwards. So I think there's a real role for large organisations to kind of lead on that and say, right, well, actually, we're going to back a couple of these, and we're going to say they're really good. We're going to work with them to make them work for employers, and actually then help people get into technology roles in a really sort of simple and easy way.
Yeah, and really put sort of the sponsorship and create the pathways. And
Can I just say though?
Yeah, please.
I mean, 26 boot camps in Manchester alone is really impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Do you know how many there are in, say,
Well,
London?
no, but I think the skills gap is a problem in Toronto, in Bangalore. It's everywhere
global
because
problem.
it's a global
Yeah.
problem. But honestly, we have one of the richest ecosystems in the UK. And look, by the way, I'm not defending it at all. I'm just saying, I know that the government leaned in quite heavily into boot camps about 2 years ago because they clearly started to understand that it's not about going to university.
Yeah.
And it's not about going to colleges of further education. What constitutes learning for an individual is so different.
Yeah.
We all learn in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what's great to see, is that there's recognition from the top that people learn in different ways. And the systems that we've built that have been over 150 years old are not perhaps so applicable to the technology industry. Maybe if you want to be a dentist, you should...
I didn't go to university.
Well, exactly.
So I started work at 18 years old,
Exactly.
and actually I loved it. I liked working. So
And that's right? So the mindset...
And you're obviously pretty
and
good. So, and here you are today. So
how do you invest
Good
in
example.
mindset? How do you invest in mindset? How do you invest in ambition? And an entrepreneurial culture. An entrepreneurial culture does not mean qualifications. It means what can you do? So I think, and we've noticed recruiters are now leaning more and more like, well, what have you done? What have you been able to do with so little? And that just shows character.
yeah.
It shows tenacity. It shows determination. And yes, you may ask for a pay rise, but I have to say, you notice it in the people who ask for a pay rise. They ask it at the right time when they've genuinely shown how good they are.
Oh yeah.
So it's an interesting mindset, and I think what you're seeing, I think the good news about the technology industry is that the trends that you see in the technology industry tend to kind of ripple into other established industries. So, yeah.
And can we talk a little bit more about that, the mindset and the culture, getting that right to create this ecosystem where the gap is bridged? What have you seen done well in that space?
I think we published another report on Monday, if you're into like reading more reports. But this is sort of a macro level view of how much investment is coming into the UK. And normally, 2021 was a record high. Lots of money came in, and it was $40 billion. And when you look at the number of countries in the world that received technology investment, it's normally the US, it was China, it was India, and then the UK. For this quarter, minus June, so up to May, it's US and then the UK. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's a really healthy ecosystem right now. It obviously has challenges. There's lots of things we need to work on. But there's more money coming into the UK right now because there's such a healthy ecosystem from a regulatory point of view, from a business point of view, but also the fact that you've got a talented workforce that has been in many scale-ups. Scaling a business is really, really hard. And a lot of companies fail. And we don't perhaps talk about the failure rate enough. But believe it or not, that's no bad thing. Because the people that fail multiple times go on to be brilliant, brilliant leaders. So when investors are looking at the UK, they're like, you know what? People have done it before. They're like tenacious. They're entrepreneurial.
Experienced.
Absolutely. So it's skills is one thing, for sure you need it. But you also need the mindset, the ambition, and the culture to be kind of complementary to the capital. Because the capital will only follow great people. It's not the other way around. Great people do not follow money. Although that sounds like an oxymoron, if you get my drift, right? But honestly, great capital goes after great people.
So you would argue that in terms of, from a global perspective, the UK is very, very well positioned and actually doing quite well on this, even though if we looked at it from, say, an educational perspective, maybe we aren't as good at equipping our young people
there's more recognition.
with the harder technology skills as other nations are.
I mean, I think I'll say one thing. I think the last 10 years you've seen sort of the leveraging of technology to make businesses more, efficient, practical, more customer service oriented. I think the next decade you're going to see a lot more companies coming from breakthrough scientific research.
Yeah.
And so that's why so the UK is well known for fintechs. The UK is second in the world for fintech investment. But my God, artificial intelligence, which is going to be powering a lot of businesses that we all work with, is moving up the rankings. And that's why universities and colleges of further education are investing into how do you create an entrepreneurial ecosystem around the physical and virtual entity. And so the government right now is investing more and more into AI research because a lot more people are spinning off businesses from these centers of excellence. So unicorns or high-valued businesses, let's say, are going to come in more and more from scientific breakthrough in net zero, in artificial intelligence, in healthcare, and also rippling into other established industries.
Yeah, interesting. Any predictions for the next 10 years on this topic? Ben, Jules, Tom, and
In terms of how teams are structured, it will change. I think at the moment it's job titles. So you will be a data scientist, you'll be a software engineer, you'll be a product manager. I think what will happen is it will become more skills focused. And if you're building squads then, rather than just hierarchical teams around job titles, I think it will allow people to transition into roles and work to their strengths. So you will still be like a software engineer, but you will work on virtualization or visualization, for example, or API development, and you will link in much more with product managers. So I think the future in the next 5 but that will take time, and there will be leaders who will implement that earlier, but I feel that there will be a knock-on effect. So the way we see it and the way I see it from a recruitment perspective, it won't be job title led anymore. It will be more on the skills side, and that will change the structure of teams. And I think that will be potentially a solution in terms of how you can then get the role models, how you can retain better, how you can train better and work on more interesting projects, working to people's strengths.
Jules, do you see BT doing that, moving away from role titles?
I definitely can see that happening. I think that I think it will be more skills focused, and I think it will also need to be, a bit back to your mindset question, it needs to be more mindset focused, because if you don't have, things are going to change. It's just going to be quicker and quicker and quicker that these things change. And so you need to be able to adapt, be flexible, be willing to learn quickly, to fail fast, and they are mindset pieces that you need to be recruiting for and finding in. It sort of doesn't matter what degree you've done, or if you haven't done a degree, or you've done one in natural history. I don't know. It doesn't matter if you've got the mindset, you've got the curiosity, you want to learn, and you're willing to be collaborative, agile, and flex up and down. I think, that's going to be as important.
It's going to be hard though, right? Because for employers like us, right, we look for some sort of badge that says, I've got somebody else saying this person can do something. And it's really hard. When we started doing these talent scouting, it's like you have to completely override your recruitment process. Because to your point, I'm not looking for the badge anymore. I'm looking for the characteristics that you just described, as saying, actually, I see something in that person, and I think there's a way that I can take them and help them grow into what we're going to need from them from an organisation perspective. They will often want the badges, actually, along the way. And to your point of when do they ask for the pay rise, it's when they've got the badge, right? It's when I've got this certification, or I can now do this. And they can kind of show it. And they're like, what we find is people like to be able to show that. That, by the way, for us is, again, a massive challenge, right? We send people out and they train and they get a qualification after 3 years. It's like, so that's not going to work. I'm not interested in 3 years. Most people, actually, if you look at the Manchester tech scene, 2 years is the real pinch point for talent moving. So you've got to find a way to keep them interested, develop those skills much broader, creativity, innovation. How do you measure that? How do you show that? My prediction is there's going to be a lot of change as part of this. And actually, I think organisations are going to find it really, really hard to navigate it.
I think just in terms of retention as well, it really is about how we see it. 90% of the time is, can people make an impact on the role that they're doing? Do they really look back after 2 years, like you said, that probably is on average the time they will move on. But the reason they would stay is they've managed to make this business impact, or they can really see they feel fulfilled in the work they're doing. And that's no different to a lot of other areas of, whether it be finance, whether it be marketing, HR. And I think it's also looking at technologists and making sure that there's a platform when people hire them, when businesses hire them, to make sure there is tangible impact.
And those in tech are leading the way, right? We shouldn't. This is not a negative thing, right? We should be super optimistic there's a whole load of young people. If you look at the demographic of the UK and 18-year-olds who are going to be looking for work, looking for opportunities, it's going up, right? So, and we're in a sector where people are happier, right? It's like we should be selling that. We should be saying, actually,
Absolutely.
you can
More
be
people
more
should
fulfilled
know about that.
in this sort of work. But you have to make interventions, right? You know, so Text You Can, they started in school.
Yeah.
Because actually, the intervention needed is girls don't think technology is a career for them. Right? If you look at certain ethnic minority groups, actually, they're studying STEM subjects at school.
Yeah.
And the intervention is, don't go and be a doctor, come be a technologist. It's this super cool place where you can be creative and be yourself, by the way. That's,
Yes.
you know, high up there in the hopes and fears. Pay's number one, I will admit it. 79% of people look for pay.
Yeah.
69% of people look for fulfillment. 60%, they can be themselves at work.
Yeah.
And actually, the tech world is further ahead than anybody in that space. And the more we promote it, the more we sell it and say, actually, come join us, it's awesome.
I mean, it can be progressive, and many organisations that aren't. I think there's still a lot more that can be done around really creating an inclusive culture and obviously just representation at a baseline level as well. Before we turn over to our wonderful audience, who I'm sure have lots of questions, maybe you could give some just very practical advice. What could each of us do to bridge this skills gap, take further digital skills into our organisations? What could we do? I mean, you've mentioned some great organisations as well, but what would your one piece of advice be, sort of call to action?
I think to start, if you don't mind, I think there's a massive challenge as well with secondary schooling education around how do they actually recognise how you bridge to technology and to employers. So I think that's where it has to, that's how we can improve that. Now, the solution is mentoring and having good role models or mentors that are coming from the ecosystem and working on, you know, from high school onwards or even into primary school to make people want to take that jump and rather than become doctors, go into technology.
Yes.
So my advice to the crowd here is, you know, be role models for the next generation coming through, right? This is not a short-term solution, and that is part of the problem because we always are short to mid-term. And actually, if we are going to look at the next 10 years, that would be my advice for you as an audience.
And there's a higher number of 18-year-olds in 10 years' time than there is now. I think it's going to be 20% higher. So actually there is a real need there for educating and equipping and role modelling for the technology roles and to bridge the gap. That's great.
So I think in a similar vein, for me, I think if you're starting out and you're thinking about moving into this area, it's about being curious and really just trying to do as much learning and exploring as you possibly can. I think there is a responsibility for those of us that are already in this world to really feed that curiosity and be encouraging. And it comes back to, I read some research the other day that since 2015 there's a 40% decrease in the number of students taking IT subjects at GCSE. We are losing them that early. 40%
really
since
high.
2015. We're losing them that early. And we have a responsibility as parents, as people in the community, as employers, to be going and engaging with people early on to really help them understand what the opportunities are and what the meaningful work is that they could actually be doing, what are the incredible things that we've done because of technology. And I think we need to all do more of that.
Sounds like we need a CogX festival for schools.
I'd say do things together. Right? I think the strength of community and solving this thing together will be much greater than any of us can do individually. And you have to leave your brand at the door when you do that and say, actually, we're solving the problem for the UK. We want the UK to be an amazing place. And if we all sort of lean in on that and do that together, it will happen. It will be really hard for people to navigate on their own.
Good point.
Can I just ask the audience, how many hiring managers are there in the audience? Okay. I mean, I think hiring managers have a big responsibility to think about whether they're challenging themselves enough, about whether they're making the right choices, and whether they're prioritizing the right things. Research, you know, the pandemic obviously was awful for a lot of people, but also made a lot of people rethink some of the things that are worth or of value. So a knowledge worker and an average knowledge worker, the difference between an average knowledge worker, which I guess some of us are here in the audience, and the best knowledge worker is 10x. that difference is huge compared to a manual worker. And it's so related to the physiology of the person, the environment of the person. Are they working from home? Are they, what do they value in their lives? It's all connected to their productivity and their ability to learn and do more for the company they're working for. So I think we can all think about, where do we individually stand within the context of the business? How can I be of more value? You've probably heard of the 10x value system. Like, if you're coming in, how can you provide 10x your pay to the business? It's not something we talk about enough, actually, probably at our company, but that's the way I think, and it's and that's the kind of the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah.
So, but hiring managers have a big role to play. And how many people are looking for? No, I shouldn't ask that question actually. But how many people are actually in the technology industry, or think they are in the technology industry? And how many people are not, or looking to join? Okay, so
We've got the right audience.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's always good to know. Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for all of that advice. I'm going to turn over now to questions. So if you could just raise your hand, there are mics going around, and I'll just take a question at a time. Thank you. Could we get a mic to the front over here? And if you could hold the mic quite close so we can really hear the question for the recording as well.
Good morning. Thank you for a very inspiring conversation. I have a question about how would you approach to rescaling the refugees communities? Because we're living right now, and there is a full-scale war going on in Ukraine. It's over 8 million refugees. Some of them are also joining us in the UK here. So what would you be your advice and programs about rescaling refugees? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, please.
We're actually involved in an initiative, again, across companies, looking to reskill from a language perspective, first of all, because actually that's one of the biggest barriers, and then work out how to get people from that into the workforce. I think there are existing forums, and again, I'm one of these, like, we'll do more together on this. So the more people that join those forums and actually contribute, and I mean contribute by not just ideas, but then say, okay, right, here's how we do the skills that are needed piece, or here how we do the employment piece. Yeah. And I think there are a couple of them that are out there that are doing a really great job at trying to highlight that to support people from all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add. It's obviously hugely topical. There are so many people that we need to help with reskilling, and that is, that is one group of many. And I think the responsibility is with us to help cover all those communities through the reskilling programs that we already have in place, through the organisations that you referenced before, and it's very hard to watch, and you feel like you need to do more. And it's how we create the bridge between us and those individuals, and how do we make sure they know where to go to find that support. And I think that's the bit that probably finding hardest. And so having to use organisations that are already set up and linked in with them is the way to go. But it's not an easy one to answer.
Yeah, I think we've been quite involved in the Ukrainian situation and the impact that's having on Belarus and Russia, but also other parts of the world. So we run a visa scheme, because obviously that's to do with the skills agenda as well. And we are processing applications within hours rather than weeks. And we're just trying to make sure, because we've got people on the ground being impacted by this. And what we've done is actually set up networks in Russia and Ukraine to give hope. I mean, and raise awareness of the possibilities that there is a way into another country, because they'll be looking at all sorts of possibilities. So, but we are very aware that there are other parts of the world, and we're trying to prioritize applications accordingly.
And I think just from a recruitment perspective, we've been approached by a number of organisations and individuals who are looking, and I think what we've been doing is just leaning on our relationships we have with different clients to make those introductions as well. So I think it is on a case by case as well in terms of making that impact.
Great, thank you. Can we have another question? Yeah? Oh, you have the mic. No, sorry. No, if you've got the mic, ask your question. Sorry, yeah, you win.
You have the
Sure,
power.
I'm sorry. I come from India, and there's obviously a lot of pressure on kids to go into technology, which is quite opposite to what we see in the UK. I myself am a software engineer. I consider myself a lab software engineer because I never got around to going into the industry. Instead, I started writing about technology because I knew so much about it. But one of the reasons now I'm realizing that I didn't like software so much is because of the approach that my teachers took to teaching me technology. It was almost always about the textbook and what was in the textbook. So a different approach would work better for me. I'm realizing now that as a writer. And now when I speak with CTOs and CDOs, they are saying the thing that I keep hearing them, obviously there's a big skill gap. But they're saying that technology itself can help bridge that skill gap by helping kids learn better, and also through no-code or low-code ecosystems, which can help people learn faster.
And so the question...
The question is, do you feel that that's true, or do you think a different approach could help kids learn better?
Yeah.
Yes,
please.
100%, right? So what constitutes learning for you is very different than the next person. In fact, if there was one bit of advice, to your point, that I try and share with people I mentor, is just invest time in understanding how you learn. That will pay dividends for so long in your life, because how you learn will be very different to the next person you work with. And the fact that you'll have differences and difference of opinions is great, because being in positions of discomfort makes you grow faster and better and become a better person and a better leader. So absolutely, I think people between the ages of 12 and 18 are completely learning differently and picking up skills which we have never foreseen before, right? So I think the skills gap is multi-generational, and that's why you're going to see, I think, really honestly looking ahead in 30 years' time, the notion of just doing a one domain degree or skill is going to be disappearing slowly. It's going to be so interdisciplinary, from being able to analyze a model to being able to know how to protest in the streets. It's mind-blowing. So all I'm saying is 100% agree with you. And I think hiring managers, CEOs, HR directors have to understand that how do you provide the context and the environment for people to be their best? Because everyone's slightly different.
Yeah, thank you. Next question. Who has the mic now? Ah, there we are. Yes, please. Thank you.
Hi. I think the question that I had in my mind, I think in a way you have just responded to that, but I do want to articulate it. I think there were twice somebody said that we don't, about medical doctors, that rather than being a medical doctor, think about this option as well, going into IT. And I'm reminded of a story which recently came about where I'm sure this happens, this is something which is very much part of the medical industry, is
just
that...
because we're slightly limited on time, can I
quickly,
ask for the question?
It is,
yes,
but
great.
it will come.
Okay.
So a doctor, a surgeon who is on vacation in India can now remotely do an operation somewhere else in the world. So I think, like you said, it is going to be interdisciplinary. If you could just shed some more light on that we don't choose just the tech industry, but making tech very much a part of other industries as well.
Okay, how do we make it more interdisciplinary?
I think we're seeing that. I mean, certainly that's what our clients talk to us about, right? They're in every sector, in every industry. And by the way, I think sector and industry's got a big role to play as well in this, in terms of the future of just technology and skills. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're all having to transform themselves. The pandemic actually has forced a lot of them to start thinking about that, because they kind of had to. They just had to operate differently. Yeah. They had to deal with their customers differently. So I think that is naturally happening quite fast. And I think we will see those that do it fastest and most successfully will be the ones that succeed and grow faster than others. So I think it is already pervasive. The whole digital agenda in particular across non-tech organisations is huge.
I could share a story very
Please,
quickly.
yes.
Software engineer. So in Singapore, you have vouchers for lifelong learning. The government actually gives people vouchers. They can do anything they want. Flower arranging, being a barista. A short story, software developer in Singapore gets given one of these kind of vouchers. He decides to become a barista. He loves it. He becomes a much more customer-centric software developer, right? That is learning. That is growing in a different way. That's not being too obsessed about the skill set that you already have, but how do you grow as a person so that you become able to do more things? And the more you do, the more you can do.
Yeah.
So that's a great example of,
I like that example.
we'll be
Yeah.
talking to the government about that.
And well, please do. And I think that's also brings us to a good ending point where all of us can think about how we can become more interdisciplinary, how we can be educating and raising awareness for the next generation, how we can also be mentoring as well. And so I would like to end with a round of applause and a thanks to the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Please stay on stage with me a moment. I love that curiosity point that was made. And also, all of us that are mid-career, we have a longevity ahead of us, right? And we want to keep contributing to society with the technology. And this is really the launchpad for bringing all of our ideas together. So thank you to our wonderful panel. Please join me in giving them a massive round of applause to Hephzi, Gerard, Ben, Julie, and Tom. Thank you. And I also just wanted to say that this session was brought to life by